Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to the channel. Today, we are going to explore a challenging, yet incredibly important topic, the homelessness crisis in San Francisco, a city known worldwide for its massive bridges, stunning natural landscapes, and as a symbol of technological innovation. However, behind the bright lights, behind the beautiful pictures everyone sees, there is a terrifying truth that few want to face. San Francisco, once considered a sanctuary of prosperity, is now confronted with a serious problem: the growing homelessness crisis, which is pushing thousands of people into a life without shelter, struggling to find temporary refuge in the heart of the city. San Francisco, a symbol of prosperity and creativity, but behind the bright lights lies a terrifying truth: an increasing homeless community. Why is a city like San Francisco witnessing such a humanitarian crisis? Let's uncover the truth about this situation. So, what really led San Francisco to this predicament? Could it be the shortage of affordable housing, the skyrocketing cost of living, or the difficulties within housing and social support policies? Together with me, you will be guided through the deep-rooted causes and gain a better understanding of one of the most severe social crises currently unfolding in the heart of this city. Stay with us and explore this story, a story not just about numbers and policy issues, but also about the people who have been left behind, struggling with challenges that seem almost impossible to overcome. San Francisco has always been the dream destination for millions around the world, where people come to build their future, where the grand bridges stretch across the bay, where the most innovative tech companies thrive, and where vibrant neighborhoods pulse with life. The bright lights of this city shine brightly, lighting up every corner, leaving people in awe and wishing they could be part of it. However, as the night falls, another darker side of San Francisco begins to emerge. Those bustling streets are not only filled with people rushing to work, but also with silent figures living life without homes. The homeless, struggling to find a makeshift shelter under the foggy sky. This is a reality that few want to acknowledge, an undeniable crisis unfolding right in the center of this wealthy city. The homelessness situation in San Francisco is currently a severe crisis that cannot be ignored. According to the latest data from 2023, more than 9,700 people are living without homes in this city. But that number is just the tip of the iceberg, as most of them are unable to find safe shelter and instead live in makeshift camps or simply on the streets, in the dark corners of the city that no one seems to care about. Especially, nearly 70% of them have to live on the streets, facing all the challenges of extreme weather, loneliness, and deprivation. San Francisco's population exceeds 800,000, yet there are too few shelter beds and support services. Specifically, the city only has about 2,500 shelter beds, while the demand continues to rise with over 9,000 homeless people. Moreover, emergency support services like healthcare, medication, and rehabilitation centers are insufficient, further increasing the suffering of those living on the streets. San Francisco is a wealthy city with a strong economy, but it is this very wealth that is creating a stark division between those living in prosperity and those left behind. The cost of living in San Francisco has skyrocketed, while the average wage of its residents is not enough to maintain a stable life. Rent prices have soared to staggering levels, with a one-bedroom apartment costing as much as $3,200 per month, while the average monthly income is around $4,000. As a result, workers, low-income families cannot sustain their living standards, and they are forced to accept life on the streets, without shelter, without protection from the harshness of nature and society. This has created a glaring contradiction between the city's rapid development and the lives left behind. The city spent over $300 million in 2023 to address homelessness, but these expenditures primarily went toward temporary solutions, unable to fully resolve the issue. Shelters cannot provide enough space for everyone who needs it. The lack of medical services, medications, and rehabilitation centers is putting homeless individuals at risk of health dangers, from infectious diseases to severe mental health issues. What has caused San Francisco, a city of dreams and prosperity, to face such a severe homelessness crisis? One of the first causes to mention is the severe shortage of affordable housing. Affordable housing projects cannot keep up with the rising demand, and the current housing policies do not meet the needs of low-income individuals. Meanwhile, the increasing cost of living and skyrocketing rental prices make it impossible for working-class and low-income people to stay afloat. In addition, Issues related to drug addiction and mental health cannot be overlooked. According to statistics, more than 40% of homeless individuals in San Francisco struggle with serious drug issues, especially methamphetamine and fentanyl. These substances not only severely impact their health, but also exacerbate homelessness, as those suffering from addiction cannot access medical and rehabilitation services. Over 47% of homeless individuals in San Francisco face severe mental health issues, such as depression, PTSD, and schizophrenia, and they cannot find the help they need from treatment centers due to the limited number of beds and resources available at these facilities. The homelessness crisis is not just an issue for those directly affected, but also has a significant impact on the community and society as a whole. First, there is the issue of public health. Homeless people, unable to access medical services, are a source of spreading various diseases in the community. Areas like Tenderloin and Mission District, where many homeless individuals congregate, have seen an increase in infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, hepatitis C, and skin conditions caused by unsanitary living conditions. The incidence of violence and crime has also risen in areas with large homeless populations. Neighborhoods like Tenderloin and Bayview Hunters Point have become hotspots for thefts, assaults, and violence due to a lack of resources and unstable living environments. Additionally, the social divide is becoming more pronounced. While affluent areas like Nob Hill and Pacific Heights are less affected by homelessness, poorer areas, where homeless populations are higher, suffer significant hardship. This increases the divide between the rich and poor, creating an unequal society. The homelessness crisis in San Francisco serves as a wake-up call about the lack of effective policies, the injustice in resource distribution, and the neglect of vulnerable groups in society. The city government has implemented several measures, but they have not been enough to fully solve the problem. Community and nonprofit organizations like the Glide Foundation and the San Francisco Homeless Outreach Program are doing their best to provide support, but they are also facing significant financial and resource challenges. So, what really caused a wealthy city like San Francisco to face this situation? Let's take a deeper look at the root causes that have pushed this city into an inescapable spiral. One of the main reasons the homelessness crisis has worsened is the rapid rise in housing costs. In recent years, rental prices in San Francisco have skyrocketed out of control. A one-bedroom apartment now has an average rent of $3,200 per month, while the average salary of residents is only about $4,000 a month. This means that for a large portion of the workforce, it is impossible to maintain a stable life without support from family or other sources of income. Additionally, there is a severe shortage of affordable housing. Although San Francisco is a large and wealthy city, affordable housing projects cannot keep up with the demand from low-income residents. The city is short more than 10,000 affordable housing units to meet the needs of middle or low-income families. This shortage of affordable housing forces low-wage workers and newcomers to the city to struggle to find stable housing, leaving them with no choice but to live in temporary and shelterless conditions. Along with the housing shortage, the increasing use of drugs and rising crime rates are also significant factors contributing to the homelessness crisis in San Francisco. Methamphetamine and fentanyl, highly addictive drugs, have become widespread, driving many people into homelessness. Over 40% of homeless individuals in San Francisco have drug addiction issues, and this condition not only worsens their suffering, but also makes it difficult for them to access medical and rehabilitation services. Drug addicts often lack the physical health and resources needed to change their lives, especially as treatment centers are severely limited in facilities and personnel. Crime has also risen in areas with large homeless populations, creating a dangerous environment for both the homeless and the surrounding community. Theft, violence, and assaults are frequent in these areas, making life for the homeless even more stressful. Homeless people not only face material deprivation, but also live in constant fear of violence and unprovoked attacks. While the government and community organizations are working hard to address this issue, underlying causes such as high housing costs, the shortage of affordable housing, and the rise in crime and drug addiction continue to exacerbate the homelessness crisis in San Francisco. Homeless individuals are not only victims of resource shortages, but also individuals left behind in a system that is increasingly distant and indifferent to them. The combination of all these factors creates an endless cycle, worsening the homelessness crisis and showing no signs of stopping. Now more than ever, this city needs a strong policy change in housing, access to rehabilitation services, and a more humane perspective toward those who are forced to live in hardship on the streets. The homelessness situation in San Francisco is not just the result of a shortage of housing or rising living costs. There is another important factor we cannot overlook: mental health issues and drug addiction, which contribute significantly to the homelessness crisis in this city. Without timely and comprehensive intervention from healthcare and rehabilitation services, homeless individuals will remain trapped in a painful cycle with no escape. About 47% of homeless individuals in San Francisco struggle with serious mental health issues. Diseases like depression, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and schizophrenia make up a large portion of those living on the streets in temporary camps. For them, maintaining a stable life is almost impossible. These mental health issues not only cause immense emotional pain, but also make life on the streets even worse. Symptoms such as anxiety, confusion, and violent or self-destructive behavior often manifest. Moreover, a tragic reality is that these homeless individuals cannot access full treatment services, making their condition progressively worse. This not only affects them personally, but also burdens society, as these untreated diseases spread unchecked, creating significant public health risks. One of the biggest issues that the homeless face in San Francisco is accessing mental health and addiction recovery services. Currently, treatment centers lack the resources to meet the growing demand from the homeless population. The system is severely lacking in beds and treatment professionals, preventing many from receiving the necessary care. This creates an inescapable cycle. Individuals with mental health issues or drug addiction cannot receive the help they need, causing their condition to worsen, while they continue to be part of the never-ending homelessness crisis. As mental health and addiction recovery centers have very few beds and resources, these individuals are forced to continue living outside the system with no support. San Francisco has only about 30 drug treatment beds, a number that is insufficient to meet the needs of more than 4,000 drug users in the city. This not only prevents them from accessing help, but also creates chaos within the homeless community, where drug addicts live in destitute conditions, vulnerable, and without protection. Moreover, the lack of medical recovery facilities and mental health support services forces the homeless to face long-term health issues without adequate care. The current treatment centers cannot meet the growing needs of the homeless population, and this scarcity makes their lives darker than ever. This issue does not stop at the homeless individuals. It also affects public health, as untreated mental health conditions and drug addiction continue to spread, creating large health risks in the community. The shortage of recovery treatment facilities in San Francisco is pushing thousands into temporary and miserable living conditions. The current solutions are not strong enough to resolve this issue comprehensively, and without timely reforms in the healthcare system, the homeless will continue to fall into an inescapable loop. San Francisco needs a strong and sustainable strategy to support the homeless in their mental health and addiction recovery. Without significant investment in these services, the homelessness crisis will continue to escalate, becoming an unsolvable problem in the near future. The homelessness crisis in San Francisco, while a long-standing and complex issue, has forced the city government to seek solutions to cope with it. Although efforts have been made to provide support services and temporary solutions, these measures are still insufficient to fully address the growing homelessness crisis. So, what are the reasons behind the ineffectiveness of these policies? In recent years, the San Francisco government has implemented some measures to cope with homelessness, but most of them are only temporary and lack the power to address the root causes of the problem. One of the more obvious solutions has been the expansion of temporary shelters, providing refuge for the homeless for short periods. These shelters have helped alleviate some of the difficulties faced by those without homes, but they are not a sustainable solution. The number of shelter beds is still insufficient to meet the demand, and homeless people continue to endure poor living conditions with no long-term protection. Moreover, the shortage of mental health support and addiction recovery services remains a major issue, preventing many from escaping the cycle of homelessness. In addition, short-term measures such as providing food and emergency medical services are necessary but not enough to help the homeless reintegrate into society. When homelessness is not addressed from its root causes, these solutions only create a temporary cover without bringing lasting change to their lives. One of the measures the government has implemented is the cleanup campaigns of homeless areas. These campaigns are regularly carried out to remove homeless camps and areas where homeless individuals gather. While these could be seen as timely solutions, they do not address the core issue of homelessness. Cleaning up these areas does not help the homeless escape poverty and deprivation, as once these areas are cleared, they simply move to other areas of the city or the outskirts, creating an endless cycle. This not only complicates the homelessness situation, but also leads to exhaustion and stress for the homeless, as they are constantly moved without a long-term solution to improve their lives. Cleanup campaigns do not bring real change to their lives, but rather increase feelings of abandonment and rob them of opportunities to reintegrate into society. While the government continues to search for solutions to address homelessness, community and nonprofit organizations have played a critical role in supporting the homeless in San Francisco. Organizations like the Glide Foundation and the San Francisco Homeless Outreach Program have provided essential services such as food, medical care, rehabilitation services, and counseling. These organizations not only help improve the temporary living conditions of the homeless, but also provide services necessary for them to have an opportunity to reintegrate into the community. However, these organizations are facing a major challenge regarding finances and resources. With limited resources, many organizations cannot provide sufficient services to meet the growing needs. Donations and support from the community are not always enough to sustain these organizations, leading to a shortage of facilities, a lack of caregivers, and insufficient specialized rehabilitation programs. Although these organizations are doing their best to improve homelessness, without adequate support from the government, they cannot bring lasting change to the lives of homeless individuals in the city. The financial and resource shortages faced by community organizations make the fight against the homelessness crisis harder than ever. The government and community organizations need to have closer cooperation, along with sustainable resources and policies to support the homeless, not just in terms of material needs, but also in mental health, well-being, and opportunities for reintegration into society. Clearly, despite efforts from the government and nonprofit organizations, the homelessness issue in San Francisco has not been adequately addressed. To change this situation, a more comprehensive strategy is needed, not just relying on temporary measures, but making long-term investments in affordable housing projects, mental health and addiction services, as well as reintegration programs for the homeless. The government, nonprofit organizations, and the community must work together to find sustainable and more humane solutions to help those living on the streets without a roof over their heads. Homelessness is not just an issue affecting those directly impacted, but also a major problem for society as a whole, with direct effects on public health, public safety, the economy, and social inequality. San Francisco, a city known for its prosperity and remarkable development, is now facing the serious consequences brought on by the homelessness crisis. These consequences not only diminish the quality of life for residents, but also threaten the stability of society and the economy in the city. Homelessness affects not just individuals, but also has a significant impact on public health. In San Francisco, nearly 50% of the homeless population struggles with severe mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, and schizophrenia. These individuals not only have to live in impoverished and miserable conditions, but also lack access to appropriate medical services, which worsens their health conditions. The lack of medical care not only leads to long-term health problems, but also makes them a source of spreading diseases to the community. In homeless areas like Tenderloin or near the Mission District, there has been an increase in infectious diseases, including tuberculosis, hepatitis C, and skin diseases due to poor living conditions and lack of proper medical care. These diseases not only directly affect the homeless, but can easily spread to the surrounding community. Living outdoors, lacking hygiene, and not having safe living conditions make these health problems even more severe, creating a major public health risk. Furthermore, living in a polluted environment with dust and harmful substances from traffic and industry increases the risk of respiratory diseases, particularly among children and the elderly living in these areas. These diseases not only affect the health of the homeless, but can also spread widely within the community, increasing the risk of illness for society as a whole. The homelessness situation also creates serious public security issues. As areas like Tenderloin become major concentrations of homeless individuals, an increase in crime is inevitable. Theft, assault, and violent behaviors have become prominent issues, causing concern for residents and undermining security in these areas. The lack of facilities and support services for the homeless also increases the risk of violence. Many homeless individuals, especially those struggling with drug addiction, may become targets for other criminals or fall into violent cycles within their own communities. Fistfights, attacks, and other violent behaviors are happening more frequently, creating a tense and dangerous atmosphere in these areas. This not only affects the homeless, but also has a negative impact on the lives of the surrounding residents. This situation increases feelings of insecurity and anxiety within the community, especially in areas like Mission and Bayview Hunters Point, where crime rates have risen due to unstable living conditions and lack of security. The homelessness crisis not only impacts health and security, but also directly affects the economy of San Francisco. Despite having a strong economy, the city still faces enormous costs to handle the homelessness issue. The city government has to spend millions of dollars each year on emergency medical services, temporary shelter support, and homeless cleanup campaigns. According to a report from the San Francisco Homeless Outreach Program, each homeless person costs around $30,000 per year for emergency medical services and other social costs. This not only increases costs for the city, but also reduces the effectiveness of financial resources allocated to other social issues. Homelessness also weakens labor productivity and the ability to maintain long-term economic activities in the community, as a large portion of the population is unable to participate in the workforce due to health issues and deprivation. One of the biggest impacts of homelessness is the growing social divide. Homeless individuals not only face material hardship, but are also marginalized by society, facing significant stigma and discrimination from the community. While many nonprofit organizations and communities have tried to help the homeless, stigma still exists in society, making it difficult for them to find employment, access support services, and reintegrate into the community. The divide between the wealthy and the poor in San Francisco is becoming more pronounced. Affluent areas like Nob Hill and Pacific Heights are generally less affected by homelessness, while areas like Tenderloin bear the brunt of the crisis. The wealth divide becomes even more evident as wealthier areas focus solely on infrastructure development for tourism and commerce, while poorer areas bear the social issues, including homelessness and public security concerns. The homelessness crisis in San Francisco is a clear example of the failure in housing policies, financial management, and the lack of long-term support programs. While some progress has been made in reducing the number of homeless individuals, much remains to be done. We need to change the way we address this issue, not just with temporary solutions, but with sustainable and long-term policies. The government and the community must work more closely together to resolve this crisis. If you agree that no one deserves to live on the streets, please share this video and join the discussion on solutions for homelessness. Don't forget to subscribe to continue exploring social issues that need to be addressed.